So on behalf of the devotees, we want to welcome everyone this evening's hearing from Bhagavad Gītā. Today it gives us great honor, very great pleasure to invite His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu to take the class on the Gītā. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai.
जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki Jai Shri Krishna Balaram ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Starting by chanting from the 10th chapter, text 26. This chapter is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. So let's chant the verse. Ashvatta sarva vrikshana Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi Ashvattaha sarva vrikshana Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi Ashvattaha sarva vrikshana Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi Prabhus
Ashvattaha sarva vrikshanam Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi
Ashvattaha sarva vrikshanam
Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi.
Matajis.
Ashvattaha sarva vrikshanam Devarshinam chanaradaha Gandharvanam chitrarataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi.
Ashvattaha sarva vrikshanam Devarshinam chanaradaha
Devarshinam chanaradaha
Gandharvanam chitrataha Siddhanam kapilo munihi.
Siddhanam kapilo munihi.
Please repeat the transliterations. Ashvattaha, the banyan tree. Sarva vrikshanam, of all trees. Devarishinam, of all the sages amongst the demigods. Cha, and Narada, Gandharvanam, of the citizens of the Gandharva planet. Chitrarataha, Siddhanam, of all those who are perfected. Kapila Munihi, Kapila Muni. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. ki. Please repeat the translation. Of all trees, I am the banyan tree. And of the sages among the demigods, I am Narada. Of the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha. And among perfected beings, I am the sage Kapila. Please hear the purport. The banyan tree, Ashwatha, is one of the highest and most beautiful trees. And people in India often worship it as one of their daily morning rituals. Amongst the demigods, they also worship Narada, who is considered the greatest devotee in the universe. Thus, he is the representation of Krishna as the devotee. The Gandharva planet is filled with entities who sing beautifully, and among them the best singer is Chitraratha. Amongst the perfect living entities, Kapila, the son of Devahuti, is a representative of Krishna. He is considered an incarnation of Krishna, and his philosophy is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Later on, another Kapila became famous, but his philosophy was atheistic. Thus, there is a gulf of difference between them. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sankhitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Savajatam Sadhana Ratnatam Nirantam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Manichaya Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Vana Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaveshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Namo Mahamadanyaya Krishna Prema Radhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Namaha Vachantabhyacha Kripa Sindhu Vyadeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vāsadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. So in this verse, one thing that we must remember, Satish Prabhu, you're here. Jai, welcome Prabhuji. Welcome. So in this place, in this entire chapter, one thing we should remember is that from the 10th canto, 14th verse onwards, right? Before that, we know that Krishna speaks 4 of the most important seed verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gītā. And in those 4 verses, we understand that the whole concept of devotional service is very nicely outlined. After those verses come, in 10:14, Arjuna actually begins to speak something very important. After hearing the greatness of Krishna, Arjuna then says in the 14th verse that he is accepting Krishna, and he accepts him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he says that whatever Krishna you are saying now, I accept as truth. This is a very important principle in devotional service. If we really say that we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then whatever that Krishna is stating in Bhagavad Gītā, or whatever the devotees are speaking in Srimad Bhagavatam, we must accept it as truth. This is very important. Sometimes we just accept from a ritualistic point of view, or from a formality point of view, Krishna is God. But what does it mean? What it really means is that you are accepting that what he says is the truth. If you say someone is God, therefore he is supreme, but his words are not considered supreme, then how can he be considered God? You see? So sometimes what happens is, devotees are unable to accept some of the instructions given in Shastras by Krishna. And therefore, if they say they cannot accept what he's given as instructions, but they accept him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is something wrong. There is no correlation. So it is not enough just to state or proclaim that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is more important is to behave in such a way that we accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That means what Arjuna has said. Sarva Meta Ritam Mandye Yan Mam Vadasi Keshavaha. So this is very important. In the first two lines, Arjuna says very clearly that whatever that you are saying, I am accepting as true. Right? So this is the first point he says. Then after that, he in text 17, further down in text 17, Krishna then asks a very practical question. And this is really nice. And that's why Arjuna asks a very practical question to Krishna. And this is really nice. Because you'll find one thing about Arjuna is that he's not a theoretical devotee. He's not just proclaiming Krishna as supreme absolute truth. In the second chapter, for example, much earlier, you realize that after he had heard so much philosophy from Krishna, from 259 onwards, he continues to ask very, very important questions. Tell me, how does a person who follows you, what does he think? What does he say? How does he sit? How does he breathe? What does he do? So these are practical things that we want to know in devotional service. It is not enough for us to talk philosophy, but at the end of the class, at the beginning of the class, before we came, we have to act on it. Therefore, our behavior to the living entities becomes very important. When our relationships break down, when we realize that we are disturbing other people, when we become a source of disturbance and difficulty to others, how can we claim to be devotees? Because we are not following and accepting Krishna as the Supreme Absolute Truth. If we really accept him as Supreme Absolute Truth, then all of this is forbidden by Krishna in our behavior as devotees. So you see, Arjuna is very practical. He wanted to know in the beginning of the Gītā, how does a person, Sthita Prajna, how does one who has realized truth and who's fixed in truth, Sthita means to be fixed, how does he behave? What does he say? What does he do? He wanted to know that. And the same thing in 10:17 he's doing now. Because in 10:17, if you see, he's asking the same questions. How shall I consistently think of you? Now he's turning it around. He says, Krishna, how do I consistently think of you? Isn't that a question we all want to know? We always ask ourselves, how do we remember Krishna when we have work, when we are in between occupations, when we are just doing mundane activities? So he's asking that question. And he says, he addresses Krishna as Supreme Mystic, right? Oh Krishna, oh Supreme Mystic. Why does he call him Supreme Mystic? Because it is not easy to understand Krishna. Nahi asya karhichit rajan, puman veda vidin siddham. It is stated by Bhishma Dev himself in the first canto, 9th chapter. Bhishma Dev tells the Pandavas that Nahi asya karhichit rajan. Nobody can understand the plans of Krishna because nobody can understand Krishna. If you can understand someone, you know his plans. If you cannot understand someone, how can you know his plans? So then Bhishma Dev says even the great mystics and yogis are trying to understand. But in the end, muyanti kavayopihi, they are all bewildered. They are all bewildered. So therefore, in the same way, Arjuna is now asking this question. How shall I constantly think of you? And then he says, how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered? That's why the 10th chapter is very unique. Because in 10th chapter, Krishna now gives Arjuna different ways of remembering him. Wherever there is something very glorious, Krishna basically says that glorification, that energy is mine. Sometimes you may think Krishna is too much. He's just establishing supremacy in anything that is good. But it is his right, because he has created the concept of supremacy. And none of us can claim to be supreme. Only he can claim to be supreme. And that is why in this shloka, he says, how shall I know you? How shall I constantly think of you? And in what various ways will I get to know you? This is very important. And then after that, he explains to Krishna in 10:18, he says nicely, Krishna, don't mind me saying this, but actually, no matter how many times I hear about you, I am never satisfied. That's his point. He is never satisfied. And this is the greatness of Krishna. And therefore, it is so nicely stated that actually no one can get tired of listening and hearing Krishna. There is one shloka, in the first canto. It is Swadu Swadu Pade Pade. It's 1119 of Srimad Bhagavatam. 1119. If you see there, it is very nicely stated. Vayam tu na vipradhyama uttama shloka vikrame yad shravataam rasajnanam swadu swadu pade pade. And the meaning is very nice. Here it is nicely stated. Can you just scroll down, Prabhu? The translation, yeah. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with Him, they relish hearing of His pastimes at every moment. Every moment. So this is nice. Pade pade. At every step, every moment, we never tire of hearing about Krishna. Now 1 month passed, and we were all engaged in Damodar programs. Left, right, center, up, down, everywhere. In all the 8 directions of the world, devotees in Singapore were actually doing Damodar programs. And I think we definitely exceeded 108. We moved into, I think, 190 something? Yeah, I think 180 or something. And I think there were still devotees who may have done it but did not even come and tell us. So if you ask me, if you have 100 over programs in 1 month, it's not easy. Considering that no one here is brahmachari and no one is a full-time devotee, right? No sannyasi is also here. So we are all working, we are all struggling with our own devotional service. And yet all of you were never tired of hearing and chanting and speaking about the Lord. Same pastime, 100 over times everywhere. Can you imagine that? But still no one said, I can't take this anymore. Thank God 1 year will pass and then we will hear about Damodar Gītā again. We're not saying that, isn't it? If we have to hear it, fine. Today I went for a program, and at the end of the program we did Damodar, Ashtakam. So you see, so there's no end to this. That's why Arjuna is saying, Krishna, don't mind me, I'm asking all these things because really there's no end. I want to constantly hear about you because it is always sweet. So whenever you get tired of matter, we should affirm that we should always be in spirit. That's why we want a culture in our congregation where we refrain from gossip, where we refrain from politics, we refrain from talking about each other in snide, indirect, direct manner, which has nothing to do with Krishna. This is very important. The moment we get into that space, the material dirt will touch us. Then it becomes very difficult for us to have taste to hear Krishna. It's very dangerous, right? And you know what? They say that the devil mixes truth with lies. Devotees also must be careful. We may be doing 2 hours of reading Bhagavatam. After reading Bhagavatam, we go into Prajalpa. What is the point of that? What has the Bhagavatam taught us if after 2 hours we are talking about each other or talking about a third person? This is a disease in ISKCON, and we are challenged by it every day in so many temples. And that's why we want purity of intention. Arjuna wanted to know very purely, what are your wonderful opulences, Krishna? Tell me so I can remember these opulences. And that is what he got now. And that is what from then on Krishna will speak about. So here Krishna is mentioning 3 or 4 energies that he's speaking about. The first is the banyan tree, Ashwatthah, right? And the banyan tree is very famous. In so many parts of Bhagavatam, so many parts of Shastras, you always hear about the banyan tree. If you have seen a banyan tree in its glory, you'll realize nothing gives shade more like a banyan tree. And that's why of all the trees, Krishna says, I am banyan tree. Because it is really considered to be the king of all trees. Interestingly speaking, Prabhupada also says that it is the most beautiful and one of the tallest trees that you can see. That's the beauty of the banyan tree. But what's very interesting is the banyan tree plays an important part in the Bhagavad Gītā. If you later on will come to the 15th chapter, right? The first verse of the 15th chapter immediately goes on. That verse, Arva Moolam Advasakam, right? In that verse 15:1, Krishna himself utilizes the analogy of the banyan tree. And the banyan tree actually has many, many branches, and it's very interesting because instead of its roots going downwards, these roots go upwards and the branches go downwards. So Srila Prabhupada says actually such a tree doesn't exist in this world, isn't it? But then again in the purport, Prabhupada says actually it does. It does in the form of a reflection. So when you see the reflection of a banyan tree in the water, Prabhupada simply states that reflection reflects the banyan tree upside down. The roots are going up and the branches are coming down. So Srila Prabhupada makes such a nice point, elaborating on this point, that this banyan tree that we see in this world is actually this material nature. And the problem with material nature is, it is the exact opposite of spiritual nature. Unfortunately, we think material nature is the real thing. It's like seeing the reflection of a tree and thinking this is the tree, this is the tree, this is the tree. But we have forgotten that actually it is a reflection. Why don't we see the real thing instead of seeing the reflection? This is the basic point that Prabhupada puts across in this verse. And that's why in this world, when we look at the banyan tree, immediately those who are reading Gītā, they will remember the banyan tree represents the material energy and the material nature of the Lord. And though it is very powerful, it is illusory. It is illusory because the material energy of the Lord creates this material world, which ultimately is temporary by nature and must become unmanifest. It will go into avyakta, and therefore it will always never be there. But the spiritual world will always be there. So even though we are now sitting in this banyan tree of this material creation, if we are connected to Krishna, our roots will go down and our branches will go up. Because we are not attached to the reflection. The reflection of the tree will be seen in our desire to speak about material things. When you and I discuss material things which have nothing to do with Krishna, in an assembly where we are supposed to talk about Krishna, then what happens is our roots are going upwards and our branches coming downwards. But when we are always engaged to be very careful with each other, that we don't talk about other people, we don't talk prajalpa, we only speak about things which are favorable to Krishna consciousness, then that banyan tree will not trap us. We will not be caught by the reflection of the banyan tree. You see the point? So this is a very important thing. The other thing that comes up very often is the shade of the banyan tree. In many parts of Chaitanya Leela, in many parts of Bhagavatam, it is very nicely stated that very often a devotee or anyone would take the shade of the banyan tree. Because the banyan tree is considered to be a symbol of great tolerance and a giver, never a taker. You know, Prabhupada very often says a tree, right, is considered to be a symbol of great tolerance. Because we sit under the tree, we take so many things from the tree, we cut down the tree, we use the wood of the tree, and yet despite all of that, tree always tolerates us. So the banyan tree is like that, giving so much shelter, giving so much protection, but never asking for anything. And that is why Krishna says, of all the trees, I am actually the banyan tree. Then Krishna says that there are Gandharvas in this planet. In the higher planets there are Gandharvas. And out of all the Gandharvas, there is one Gandharva who is considered to be the king of the Gandharvas. He is known as Chitraratha. And Chitraratha, Krishna says, I am Chitraratha. Of all the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha. And you all know Gandharvas are a race who are very famous for their musical prowess. You know, it is stated in Bhagavatam that Gandharvas are amazing singers. They can sing so beautifully, but their voices and their singing is actually meant for the glorification of Krishna. So Gandharvas may be singers, but they are not singing Bollywood songs. They are not singing any other songs. They are only singing in glorification of Krishna. So even the Gandharvas are actually devotees of the Lord. Chitraratha is a very famous Gandharva, right? Because in the Mahabharata, there is an episode where one time the Pandavas were in exile and they were resting in the night. Suddenly, the Gandharvas, led by Chitraratha, they were coming down from the heavenly planets after attending a festival of chanting of the holy names. And Mahabharata says, as they were coming in the night, suddenly they came across the Pandavas resting. So when the Pandavas woke up, especially Arjuna was very alert. When he woke up, he thought that there was an army sent by the Kauravas, and he thought that they had come to attack him. Chitraratha was the king, and he was very powerful. Not only was he a Gandharva, but they were also a powerful warrior race. So when Chitraratha saw that Arjuna had armed himself, he thought that he was armed for battle. So in that misunderstanding, a great war ensued actually. And Chitraratha and Arjuna were fighting and fighting and fighting. Now the Gandharvas are powerful warriors not on account of archery or weapons, but Mahabharata says they are very powerful because they use magic. They have magical powers and they have powers of illusion. But they are not like the Asuras in the sense that their powers of illusion are in the mode of passion and ignorance. Gandharvas tend to be in the mode of goodness. But in any case, there was a great battle. Even though Chitraratha had defeated so many different warriors before, he found he could not defeat Arjuna. And he was surprised, who is this personality who's so powerful? And finally, Arjuna's prowess and skill was so great that he defeated Chitraratha. When Chitraratha was defeated, because he's Gandharva and because he's devotee at heart, he accepted his defeat in a magnanimous fashion. And he bowed before Arjuna and the Pandavas, and he pledged support for them when he learned of their exile. So after that, the Gandharvas pledged their support, and even when the Mahabharata war was coming, many of the Gandharvas actually joined in the army of the Pandavas. So this is a very important point. So there is a point when Chitraratha has actually met Arjuna, and it's very interesting that here Krishna actually tells of all the Gandharvas, I am actually Chitraratha, right? So that is the power of Chitraratha. Then after that, Krishna says that of all the perfected beings, I am Kapila Dev. I'm Kapila Dev. And Kapila Dev is very, very powerful because Kapila Dev is actually a plenary portion of Krishna. If you have read the third canto, and I know many of you have, you will realize that a large portion of the third canto is dedicated to Lord Kapila Dev speaking to his mother Devahuti, right? Devahuti. And when Devahuti sat down to hear from Kapila Dev, it was because she had prayed very hard that her husband Kardama Muni would give her the benediction of a child that would ultimately liberate her. So when Kardama Muni was married to Devahuti, he married her on the request of her father Swayambhuva Manu. So actually Devahuti was a great princess. But then she was looking for an ideal husband who was a devotee. And truly, Kardama Muni completely fulfilled that role. You know, as Krishna conscious devotees, we always want to have Krishna conscious spouses, isn't it? It's natural. We want that. And we think that if we have Krishna conscious spouses, then everything will go right. But because we are not right, that's why even though two devotees may be married, but I tell you, it's Kurukshetra every day in the house. Do you know why? Because the devotees may appear to be devotees, but we may not be applying the principles of devotional service correctly. This is very important. Very important. So, Kardama Muni and Devahuti, if you read Bhagavatam, they were perfect in their devotional service. Because Kardama Muni was actually very renounced by his attitude. And he promised his father-in-law that I will marry your daughter and I will take care and give her shelter of devotional service. But once she gets a son, then my duty is done and I will leave for perfection of my Krishna consciousness. And Swayambhuva Manu agreed. And Swayambhuva Manu gave Devahuti away. And it is stated very nicely in Bhagavatam. At the point when Swayambhuva Manu, who himself is a great devotee, when he was about to give away his daughter, he was crying and crying so much because of separation from his own daughter. And Srila Prabhupada writes so sweetly in the purport that a father has a special place for his daughter. And when the daughter is being given away in marriage, even a great father like Swayambhuva Manu was feeling separation from his daughter. You know? So you see, devotees are not robots. We all are sentient beings. We have feelings, but the feelings are well placed. And that's why Kapila Dev actually came. Because of Kardama Muni's great service, devotional service, he impregnated Devahuti. And because Kapila Dev had planned to come into this world to deliver all of us by giving the great philosophy of Sankhya, he then agreed to appear in the womb of Devahuti. He was not born 9 months and then he was delivered. No, he is the Lord. So he appeared. And the moment he appeared, Kardama Muni, his father, kept to his word. And he left. And when he left without even looking back, actually, Bhagavatam tells us. Right? Just like when Shukadeva Goswami was born and he walked, he did not even turn around, he just walked. Vyasa Bhagavan himself was mesmerized, but he just walked. So now, Devahuti was left to be alone. and she was feeling, Bhagavatam says, the great separation from her husband, which is very natural. If you have respected your husband as a devotee and he has been a devotee and you see the good things in him, then naturally you will feel separation from him. But Devahuti had great comfort because she had a child who is actually a great personality. So then Devahuti does something very nice. She turns to Kapila Dev, and in 325.11, she chants this very beautiful shloka which tells us why Krishna is saying in this shloka 10:26 that of all the perfected beings, I am Kapila. There she says very nicely, you can chant it, Prabhu's Mataji, it's very nice. Tam tva gataham sharanam sharanyam swabritya samsarataro kutharam jijñāsayāham pragate purushasya nam sadharam parishtam. Let's sing it again. Tam tva gataham sharanam sharanyam swabritya samsarataro kutharam jijñāsayāham pragate purushasya namami sadharma vidham parishtam. Look at the synonym. In the synonym, two things are very important. Sharanam, shelter. Sharanyam, worth taking shelter. And swabritya, those who depend on you. And those who depend on you, they need to take shelter away from samsara, material existence. Remember the banyan tree? So those who take shelter, and they take shelter of one who is worthy of shelter, that shelter will protect them from material existence. And what is the role of such perfected beings? Kutharam. You see Kutharam? Kutharam means they have the axe which can cut away this ignorance. And in place of ignorance, they can give us transcendental knowledge. That's why sometimes in devotional service, when a devotee who is advanced comes to you and tells you, Prabhu, Mataji, you should stop doing this, you should not do this. And if they give you Sashtric points and they tell you, this is what Shastra says, this is what Srila Prabhupada says, this is Kutharam. They are being merciful to you. They are taking the axe and they are cutting away this material existence from your life, and they are giving you spiritual knowledge. Instead of receiving such devotees, we become insulted by such devotees. How can he say that to me? How can he tell me this? How can he tell me that? What have we learned in devotional service? Trinadapi sunichena. We're supposed to be humbler than the blade of grass, more tolerant than the tree. All that is good until somebody tells me something or uses Kutharam on me. Then I cannot take it. That is when we are really tested in our devotional service. That's when we will realize whether we are looking at the reflection all this time or we are looking at the real thing. Have we been mesmerized by this material banyan tree which is a reflection, or are we ready to cut off these material leanings and move into the spiritual realm? This is the question for us to ask. So you see now the translation, Prabhu. This translation tells us why Krishna says he is Kapila Dev as perfected being. Devahuti's prayer is very nice. She says, I have taken shelter at your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. So of all the perfected beings, Kapila Dev is the person who can give perfect shelter. Why? Because you are the axe. So he's not taking an axe, he's the axe himself. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. This is very important. I therefore offer my obeisance to you who are the greatest of all transcendentalists. That is why Kapila Dev is considered the greatest of the perfected beings, because he is the greatest of all transcendentalists. And because of him, Mother Devahuti heard the great principle of Purusha and Prakriti, which forms the basis of Sankhya philosophy. Who is the enjoyer and who is to be enjoyed? Our challenge as devotees, when we take up devotional service, is we always have the enjoyment propensity. It's natural. Prabhupada says we always want bliss. Sukham is always part of our objective. But how we get it is very important. The great devotees show us that Sukham can only come by service to the Lord, service to the devotees. Therefore, if we really want to be happy in this material world, then we must take shelter of great beings like Kapila Dev. And therefore we must take shelter of his teachings. Remember at the beginning I was saying that what is the point of saying Krishna, you are Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then we ignore his teachings? That means actually we are not factually accepting his teachings. But if we really accept his teachings, then we are actually glorifying Krishna. The spiritual master becomes very pleased when you glorify him not by words, but by behavior. If your behavior is 7% according to Shastra, Sadhu and Guru, and you follow exactly what the spiritual master wants, then that pleases him. So therefore, if we really want to take up Krishna consciousness, this is the part where we must perfect ourselves. And we can do it by taking shelter of great perfected beings like Kapila Dev. Prabhupada says towards the end of the purport that Kapila Dev is actually the real deal. But later on in time, there was another Kapila who came, and he was an imposter. And if you read, don't read, but if you read his philosophy, you'll find that actually his philosophy is atheistic. When I became introduced to Krishna consciousness, initially, right, I had the books. So I saw Kapila Dev, Kapila Dev, Kapila Dev. Then one day, one person, right, passed me a book. It wasn't from Krishna consciousness, it wasn't from Prabhupada, but he passed me a book and said, this is Kapila's philosophy. And I thought, oh, this is nice. Because I read Kapila Dev in Bhagavad. When I opened the book to read, I thought, wait a minute, this is not Sankhya Yoga. Right? Because this is all atheistic philosophy. This is saying that you are God. This is saying that you are greater than anything else. This is saying actually that there is no such thing as the God. You can be whatever you want to be. You know? So that's when I realized that there is a Kapila who is not Kapila, and there's a Kapila who is Kapila. And then later I read 1026 and I thought, there Prabhupada is saying the same thing there. So that's why the lesson I learned there is, just read Srila Prabhupada's books. It's very simple, right? Just stick to Prabhupada. You know, when a husband sticks to the wife and wife sticks to the husband, it is known as chastity. That chastity is very powerful, isn't it? So therefore, when we are eating from the thali that Srila Prabhupada has given us, don't go to other people. Don't take other ideas. We have come from so many traditions that we have had before. Those traditions are there. They have their place. But it is not our place now. Our place, our tradition is Krishna. In Govardhan Leela, today in the program I was speaking to the young boys and girls. In Govardhan Leela, Krishna challenged the age-old tradition that was put forward by Nanda Maharaj of worshipping Indra. He said, do you know why you are doing this? And Nanda Maharaj and the men said, actually we don't know. We just know we are doing this all this time. Don't do things because we have to do them. Do them because they either please Krishna, please Srila Prabhupada, or please your spiritual master. And at the very least, know why you are doing them. So we understand why we are doing it. Otherwise, what are we doing? That is why you are the axe. We need this kutharam. It is good for us. It is good for us. Srila Prabhupada says elsewhere, when a limb of a body is diseased, it is better to cut off the limb and save the body. Sometimes the act of cutting can be painful, but it is necessary. We also have had our hands in so many different things, and many of it is actually smarta. It is not smriti, neither it is shruti. It is smarta. And smarta, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has said clearly, and Srila Prabhupada has said very clearly, does not come in the line of bona fide sampradaya. So please, be in the right sampradaya and stay in the right sampradaya. That is very important. And now the last personality whom I left last is very powerful, and it is known to us, and that is Narada Muni. Right? Narada Muni, Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna says here, of all the sages, there are many, many sages. And of all the sages amongst the Devatas, there are great sages. You know, there are Sapta Rishis, there's Vishwamitra, there's Vashishta, there's Marichi, there's Atri. So many great sages are there. There's Agastya. But of all the great sages, Krishna specifically says, I am Narada. And what does Srila Prabhupada say in the purport? Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that Narada is actually the greater competition. I think Narada will be right up there. Isn't it? If you think about it, he'll be right up there. Why? Because you know, if you have time, you should look at 6.16.26 of Srimad Bhagavatam. In 6.16.26, of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, you know, that actually Narada is exalted as the father of devotional service. Father of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada says that is why in many parts of Bhagavatam, the word Bhagavan, which is reserved only for Krishna, is actually used for Narada also, because of his exalted devotional perfection. It's a very important point. The other thing that's also very important is that when you look at the length and breadth of Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Leela, you will realize one thing. You will realize that Narada is everywhere. Isn't it true? He's traveling in the universe and he makes good use of his mileage. Everywhere he is. And not only is he traveling, people travel just to sightsee. Narada is not traveling for sightseeing, right? You know, sometimes in ISKCON we travel because we're very happy when we reach the other side, we know prasadam will be there. We know shelter is going to be there. We know devotees are going to serve us. What else you need in life? Isn't it? Everything is there. But Narada does not look at that as primary consideration. He is only looking to give Krishna to others. So if you think of Narada, Narada is the devotee. Narada is the spiritual master of Vyasa Bhagwan. It doesn't get more exalted than that. Vyasa Bhagwan is the representation of the Lord. He's a plenary portion of Krishna, the literary incarnation of the Lord. And yet in the first canto, 4th chapter, Vyasa Bhagwan becomes a little bit disturbed and dissatisfied. And while he's experiencing that dissatisfaction, what happens? Narada actually comes at the right time, and he dispels this ignorance. So that he does, that is the Kutaram aspect of Narada. So Vyasa Bhagwan himself was actually touched by Narada. Then you find in Bhagavatam, no, actually you go to, even if you go to Chaitanya Leela and other parts, the great hunter Brigari, for example, he was also touched by Narada. Then you realize you have in Bhagavatam the Prachetas. You remember the Prachetas? The Prachetas were all great sons, and they were all sons of the king Prachinabarhisit. And despite having so much of royalty and so much of opulence, they gave everything up after Narada Muni preached to them. Then you had another group, I think they were known as the Haryasvas. They were also very great, but Narada preached to all of them, and they also renounced everything. Then if you go further into Bhagavatam, you find Chitraketu Maharaj was in a terrible state of affairs. When Narada came and preached to him about the difference between matter and soul, Chitraketu Maharaj's life changed. Then you find later on, because of Narada, before that, Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj, both young boys, and they were both given the benediction by Narada. Narada initiated so many devotees into Krishna consciousness. There's no end to it actually. Narada saved Manigriva and Nalakuvera. Even in the Damodar Leela that we have been going on for 1 month, we have been hearing about Narada, and Narada has been helping them also. So actually you can go on and on. Every canto, somewhere, Narada Muni is there. And if he's not preaching Krishna consciousness, he's hastening Krishna to come. In Krishna Leela, Kamsa was very happy, and he was very sadhu also. He released Devaki, he released Vasudev. He said, go back home brother, go back home sister, it's okay. I'll wait. After all, you said 8 child. I'll wait for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Then the moment they left, who came? Narada came. And Narada said, do you know in your past life you were a demon number 1, Kalaneni? And because you were demon number 1, guess who killed you? Vishnu. And guess who's coming now to kill you? Krishna. And therefore that hastened, immediately that changed the mind of Kamsa. And he said, no, call them back, we'll put them in prison again. People may think, why did Narada do that? The public always think Narada's a troublemaker. That's all they think, you know. That silly way of describing Narada in TV and movies, even in dramas, is too much actually. I hope in our dramas we never show Narada Muni that way. So far, we have never. That's really nice. So therefore, at that point of time when Narada was there, Prabhupada writes in Krishna book that Narada's duty not only includes giving people Krishna consciousness, but he was anxious as a devotee to bring Krishna into this world. And therefore, when Kamsa's activities became more demonic, the faster Krishna would come. And that would attract Krishna into this world. So that is Narada Muni's role. But the beauty of Narada Muni, Bhagavatam tells us, is that he was not always Narada Muni. And that's why he is considered amazing. He started his life as Upavarhana. One of his lives, he was a Gandharva. He must have been sitting next to Chitraratha at some point, but he was Upavarhana. And as Upavarhana, he himself tells Vyasa Bhagavan that I was actually a very powerful and amazing Gandharva. Not only was I singing very well, I was very, very handsome, and everybody was attracted to me. But I became intoxicated with pride, intoxicated with my beauty, intoxicated with my high parentage, intoxicated with my education. Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, and Shribir. And what happened? Edamana, Madahapuman. I became intoxicated. And because I became intoxicated, one day the Prajapatis organized a gathering of Gandharvas. And we all were supposed to come. And we were supposed to do Kirtan all the way to glorify Krishna. But instead of chanting and glorifying Krishna, I glorified the Prajapatis. I glorified the Devatas. And in doing so, I was more concerned about how I was singing than I was remembering the Lord. Now when the Prajapatis saw that, they became very upset and they cursed Narada. And Narada as Upavarhana was cursed. And the curse was, you have Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta and Shrivir. Now we will remove all of this from your life. And henceforth in your next life you will have nothing like that. You will be a low-born person with no material qualifications. Is that a curse or is that a blessing? It's a blessing, isn't it? Because Kunti Mata says, Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, Shrivir, Edamana, Madahapuman, Naivadhati, Abhidhatum Vai. That means you don't deserve. Tvam Akinchana Gochara. The Lord is the property of those who are materially impoverished. Meaning those who are simple in their heart. Those who use everything, Sarva Upadi Vinir Mukta. Those who engage all their senses, all their assets for Krishna. They are the ones who are considered materially impoverished. But they are spiritually very rich. Materially bankrupt is okay. Spiritually don't become bankrupt. So Narada as Upavarhana was cursed and his life ended apparently as a tragedy. But the Prajapatis, don't forget, Prajapatis are always devotees of the Lord. So any curse that comes is never from the heart. It is a prayer. Just like when Narada cursed Manigriva and Nalakuvera, he didn't curse them because he was angry with them. He cursed them because he was praying for them. Okay, so that's a very important point. And so Narada says, in my next life, I was born as a maidservant's boy. I was just the son of a maidservant, very lowly. No Janma, no Aishwarya, no Shruta, and no Shrivir, nothing. But I was lucky. My mother was a pious lady. And because she was pious, when the great souls would come to the house of her master, they were known as the Bhakti Vedantas. What would they do? They would sit down and discuss Krishna. And because they discussed Krishna, she would come and serve them. And because she came to serve them, she asked me to serve them. And therefore I was trained to serve them. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says in some of these purports, he says, training devotees is so important in Krishna consciousness. You cannot bring someone to Krishna consciousness on the basis of sentiment. Don't just tell them Krishna consciousness is you do whatever you want, it's okay. Finally Krishna is there. Please don't do that. Srila Prabhupada is not like that. Srila Prabhupada has enough letters, enough instructions to tell us devotees must be trained. You must be told what you can do and what you can't do. And that training will benefit your devotional service. So mother trained the son to serve the Bhakti Vedantas. And so at an early age, even though he's a young boys are always restless, they can't sit still at all, most of the time, except Yadu, who's like a yogi. Everybody else is not here if you notice. Then what happens? You find that this little boy was given the chance to serve the Bhakti Vedantas very nicely. And so he served them. And he says only one time they had eaten prasadam and he was given a chance to taste the remnants. And that remnants purified him even more. And therefore the spiritual journey of Narada was awakened. And therefore Bhagavatam tells us, the more he served Bhakti Vedantas, the more devotion entered his heart. The more devotion entered his heart, the more attention he gave to them. The more attention he gave to them, the more attraction he had for Krishna. Krishna Matihi Krishna Ratihi. This is the way to devotional service. And the time came when the Bhaktiveddantas were going to leave. And before they left, Bhagavatam tells us, they blessed him and initiated him into devotional service. So what is initiation actually? Initiation is just the very, very, very start of your spiritual life. It is not, I have arrived at the spiritual life. No. It is just the starting point. Starting point. You know, sometimes we are not careful. We think initiation means I've arrived. I have what we call a status. It is not. It just means I'm starting you to move. Let's move. Let the car move. That's all. It hasn't gone to anywhere, but it is moving. And so the Bhaktivedantas initiated Narada into devotional service. And what happened? They left. And Narada said that his modes of nature were controlled because of devotion. And he became purified. Then one day, by the influence of time, his mother, who was protecting him so much, went out in the night to take care of something in the cowshed, and she was bitten by a snake, and she died, leaving Narada alone. To the material world, that's a tragedy. But to Narada, it was not. The little boy remembered the instructions of the Bhaktivedantas. He saw the hand of Krishna. And so he decided, my mother was protecting me all this time, but she did not know that it was Krishna who was protecting me. And so he walked to the north, and there he went into a deep forest. And there in the deep forest, this is very nice, under a what tree? Under a banyan tree. If you look at the shloka, Ashwatha, the tree is described under a banyan tree. There is no coincidence why Krishna puts 10:26, putting Ashwatha and then Narada there also. There is always some arrangement. After all, Krishna composed the Gītā, right? He spoke the Gītā. So standing under a banyan tree, he then perfected his life by remembering the Lord in his heart. And Bhagavatam tells us Krishna appeared by speaking to him. He saw the form of the Lord in his heart, and he was so mesmerized, but the form vanished. And at that moment, Narada was a bit disturbed as a little boy, but he heard the voice of the Lord. And in one shloka, I just want to take one shloka which is really nice. I think the shloka is 1.6.21, if I'm not wrong. Is it 1.6.21? Hantasmin Janmami Bhavan Prabhu. Is it there?
Yeah.
Hantasmin, yes, this is the one. This is the one that tells us so much about why Narada is the greatest of the greatest. And because this is given by Krishna. Let's chant this verse. Hantasmin Janmani Bhavan Mamam Drashu Viharati Avipakla Kashayanam Durdarsho Aham Kuyoginam. Look at the word to word, very important. The word to word. See Avipakva. Avipakva means immature. See Kashayanam, material dirt. See Durdashaha, difficult to be seen. And study Kuyoginam, incomplete in service. Now look at the translation. Krishna says this point. I regret that during this lifetime, you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service and who are not completely free from all material taints can hardly see me. Through Narada, Krishna is telling us a very important point. He's telling us that we may take up Krishna consciousness, but if we take up Krishna consciousness, we must make sure that whatever service we take, we complete it. It should not be incomplete. We cannot just take it up and do a 6:30 job. Krishna doesn't like that. Another thing that's very important is that there should not be any material taints, dirt. That dirt should not be there in our interactions with each other, in our discussions with each other, in our social intercourse with each other. The moment there is dirt, we do not deserve to see Krishna. And one more thing that is not in the translation, but is up in the transliteration, and this is the word that's very important. All of that, if you are incomplete in service, if we have material dirt in our heart, then our devotional service is avipakva. Avipakva means it is immature. Mature devotional service is pleasing to everyone. You have met devotees whom in their presence you become inspired, isn't it so? In the presence of a mature devotee, you will be inspired to remember Krishna. In the presence of an inspired devotee, the symptom is you will be pleased to remember Krishna. And in the presence of a mature devotee, everything is very peaceful. If you can find such devotees, you be with them. You take shelter of them. That is Narada Muni. That is Narada Muni. And that is why Narada is considered the greatest of all the sages. So therefore, in conclusion, this shloka of 1026 is very beautiful because it tells us again, Krishna is so kind to all of us. He's giving us pointers. He's giving us markers. If you cannot remember something and you're very materially attached to the world, at least if you see, later Krishna will say of all the mountains, I am Himalayas, right? And then after that he'll say of all the fishes, I am shark, right? If you watch Jaws the movie, I used to love that movie when I was young. So when I read of all the fishes, I am shark, I was very happy with Krishna. So Krishna shows us that even amongst the material creation that he has created, we can still find greatness. We can still see Krishna. And Prabhupada writes that actually the reason why Krishna gives this chapter is really because it is for the materialists. It is for the materialists because the materialists cannot conceive of the spiritual nature of the Lord. But frankly speaking, every time I read the 10th chapter, every year we try to read the Bhagavad Gītā over, right? We do that. So every time you come to the 10th chapter, the 10th chapter for me is very personally important because I realize how much of a materialist I still am. Because I'm still looking for these things for me to be connected to Krishna. But Krishna is so kind. He still gives you these points. So when you remember Narada, you remember Krishna. When you look at the banyan tree, you remember Krishna. When you read Kapila Dev and accept his teachings, you remember Krishna. You see. So in so many ways, even if you remember Chitraratha, you can remember Krishna. Because you have read about them in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So please remember, Krishna consciousness is eminently practical. And please always, always be guided by Shastra, by the instructions of Krishna. Before you do anything, ask yourself, will this please Krishna or will this not please Krishna? And please, when senior devotees, exalted devotees become kuttaram, don't be insulted. Don't let your ego be bruised. Accept it, because that is the way to grow. That is the way to grow. Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavad ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Jai Gaura Premanande. I can take one or two questions. Yes, Prabhu. 1 minute, huh? Okay, or you can say, there's a mic coming. Yes, Guru.
In this verse, you were saying that the Prabhupada says that Narada Muni is considered as the greatest devotee in the universe.
Yes.
What about the gopis, Prabhu?
The gopis are not from this universe. The gopis are in the spiritual world. When Prabhupada speaks about the universe, he's speaking about this material creation. So Narada is the greatest devotee in material creation, but he's also the greatest devotee in the spiritual world. When Prabhupada uses the word greatest, what he's saying is that he's the most exalted because he has touched so many people's lives. When you look at it that way, actually, Narada is a great preacher. And our mood actually is to be a preacher. There are two kinds of persons, right? There's Goshtanandi and Bhajanandi. You can sit at home and you can remember Krishna intensely, or sit in a small circle of sadhu sangha and remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. Or you could follow the path of Narada and Prabhupada and all our acharyas and go out there into the material world and meet people and talk about Krishna. So in that way, Narada is very special to Krishna because he's taking so much risk going everywhere, chanting and remembering the holy names of the Lord. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Yes. Very nice question. Very nice question. It shows he's listening. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu. Surya Prabhu.
So how do you understand Vaishnava Yathashambhu? So he's universal.
So Lord Shiva is considered, he's considered the greatest of the Vaishnavas. But in this context, of all the sages of the Devatas, Narada is the greatest. So that context is there. From that context, Srila Prabhupada says, he is the greatest devotee in the universe. If you look at the Devatas, definitely of all the Devatas, Lord Shiva would be the greatest. In fact, in the 10th chapter, Shiva comes under the category of Rudras. Of all the Rudras, I am Shiva. So actually, sometimes a father looks at two sons and says, you are the best son. Tomorrow he says, you are the best son. Now the two sons are not going to fight with each other, right? If they come and say, Father, what do you mean? Come on, let's be clear. Is it, am I number one or am I number two? Tell me. The father will say, you're both greatest to me. Now what is the problem? You see? So we have to understand it from that perspective. For Krishna, everything is absolute. So greatest can mean many people who are greatest. But from our minute portion of mind, we think greatest means only one. No. Everyone can be the greatest of all devotees. Nothing wrong. It just means they're exalted. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Oh, yes,
On a
Prabhuji.
related point, Prabhuji, I think 138 verse of Bhagavatam
Yes.
is describing many incarnations of Krishna.
Okay.
So Narada has been described as one of the incarnations also.
Yeah.
So
It is also there. He's also an incarnation because he's the incarnation of devotion. Again, that is to be understood from the point of what we have discussed here. If you look specifically, right, there are so many plenary portions or empowered incarnations of the Lord. For example, Prithu Maharaj is Satya Avesha Avatar. So in one sense, he's in a human form, but he's an empowered incarnation. So he's a plenary portion. There are some incarnations which are plenary portions of a plenary portion of a plenary portion. But as long as the Vibhu is coming from Krishna, then they are considered incarnations. That's why 138 will list Narada also. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Very nice point. Anything else, Prabhu's Mataji's? Yes, Mataji. Can we pass the mic over?
Confusion on the terms itself, if I'm not taking them very appropriately. So in one of the verses, it's for Kapila, the verse said that he's the greatest of transcendentalists.
Yes.
Narada Muni is the greatest of devotees. And Lord Shiva, he is the greatest of Vaishnava.
Yes.
So Vaishnava Yathasam.
Yes.
So what is the difference, Prabhuji?
There's no difference. I just stated there. For a father, the father will use the word greatest on 10 children also. But if you get stuck in the wording of it and literal meaning of it, then you can't get past it. Don't see literally. These are all glorifications of great personalities. And the superlative term is used by the Lord because of the Lord's mercy. For the Lord, every devotee is the greatest devotee because they are rendering service. Just so you meet devotees who will say, Mataji, you are the best devotee. Then that same devotee will tell Prabhu, you are the best devotee. Then you think, what is happening here? You see my point, Mataji? Don't take it intellectually and don't take it literally. Take it devotionally. If you see it from the lens of devotion, it is about a Vaishnava who's seeing the great qualities of others. And for them, these great qualities are exalted to a very high level. A high level. Is that helpful? Srila Prabhupada one time was asked, that there was a debate between a few devotees about Lord Balaram's status, right? And each devotee said, Prabhupada, we believe Balaram is this, Balaram is that. Prabhupada said, you are right, you're also right. Then they all became confused. But for Srila Prabhupada, all of them are right because the Supreme is absolute. You can see him from different angles and he will still be absolute. So one thing we have to be very careful when we study Bhagavatam is don't be literal. If you are literal, if you follow it intellectually, if you're looking at it from the word point of view, you become it's potentially confusing. And don't look at it from a chronological point of view. You get completely wiped out in Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is not chronological. Bhagavatam is thematic and Bhagavatam is highlighting different portions of the journey of our self-discovery. That is what Bhagavatam is. Is that helpful, Mataji? Okay, one more.
So
Then I told you.
Kardama Muni, he, although Kapila Dev was there, he's
Yes.
a supreme lord.
Yes.
So, but still Kardama Muni, he left. So what
Yes.
is the reason?
He left because he had already taken a vow that he would go on to perfect his life by remembering Krishna. So the coming of Kadama Muni would not change that because Kadama Muni's destiny and his desire was to spread Sankhya Yoga throughout the world. Kapila Dev's point is, Kapila Dev has his own mission. Kadama Muni did not want to stay on because one, he had already done what he had to do. And two, he was showing us as a householder, once we have done our part, we should move on to the next ashram. Does it mean that Kadama Muni did not take or did not have the benefit of hearing or remembering Krishna? No. Because if you read Bhagavatam, it says that Gautama Muni perfected his life at the end by remembering the Supreme Absolute Truth. So you see, we all have different journeys, but it doesn't mean that one person's journey is any less powerful than the other. So that's very important. It's like I'm coming to Gauranga Center and I see Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra. Someone goes to maybe another center in Singapore and they take darshan of the deities in the Avasagesri temple. We are not going to fight with each other. This is original, that is replica. You cannot, these deities are more powerful than that deities. That's it. There will be perfection there as there will be perfection here. There can be perfection in your house also if you're worshipping your deities very nicely. They will not, the deities will not grudge where, oh, you didn't come to Gauranga Center, okay, that's it, you're gone. They won't do that. Because they are Krishna. Krishna is very kind. We will do that. Because we are not absolute, but Krishna will do that. Is that alright, Maharaj? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki! Yay! Prabhu, your hand is up. Is this a killer question or is it a quick question? Okay, what is the question?
You just told that we need not take it literally, we should take it thematically. But then one more point that Prabhupada says that we should read his books scrutinizingly. So what does it mean in that?
Very good point. Scrutinizingly means to study how what is stated by Shastra applies to our daily lives. That is scrutinizing. So if Srila Prabhupada says that if Krishna says, I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we cannot say, oh, we can't take it literally. That is not scrutinizing. That is foolishness. You know, when Krishna says, I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If Krishna says someone is greatest here, and later he says greatest there, it means both people are greatest. But how does that apply to you in your life? Like right now we have read so much about the opulence of the Absolute. How does this chapter apply to us in our daily life? That is scrutinizing study. And that can be done by each of us. And it must be done in such a way that only each of us, based on our real life experience, will be able to relish. Is that helpful, Prabhu? So, your situation, we can both derive application of Shastra from Bhagavatam to suit both our situations. No other literature can do that in this world. Only scripture can do that. Only scripture. Is that alright? Excellent question. Thank you very much. I think we're going to have a short presentation. Okay, this is an important presentation. I think it takes a few minutes only, right, Prabhu? We'll invite